Greetings, all you Jackson Jennets, and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, here to bring you some Steelers talk. Oh, if y'all haven't been watching free agency, it's hot and heavy, but really no Steeler news in free agency this week, so we'll just go ahead and skip that. Next week, I'll do a big breakdown of all the major trades out there. We'll go a little past Steeler talk and just NFL talk. We'll talk about like the Matt Ryan trade that just happened and how the quarterback landscape seems to have changed all to the AFC with the exception of Tom Brady unretiring in the NFC. I mean, just people getting massive contracts out there, quarterbacks getting traded, getting guaranteed more money when they come. The biggest single dead cap hit ever with $40 million from the Matt Ryan trade. I mean, there's a lot to talk about on NFL news, and I want to make sure I have it ready to go. I'll give you my personal grades of all the trades, and maybe we'll bring back Gingy. Maybe we'll bring back Laskers. We're kind of having a weird timing issue because, you know, they got lives to live. They're on the East Coast. I'm in Alaska. Makes things a little hard. Or maybe that special guest I taunted last week, I'll do it with them. But I couldn't this week because, again, time and things kind of messed it up, and I'm here now. So next week, free agency, hopefully a special guest. We'll see what's happening. But Steelers talk, let's get back into breaking down positional groups. The last time I left you, I said we were going to break down the wide receivers. That also will include the tight ends. So I'm going to start with the very bad. Outside of Juju Smith-Schuster, there wasn't really good run blocking between any receivers or the tight ends. I mean, Firemouth was terrible in terms of blocking stats. Zach Gentry actually was okay in blocking stats, but as a guy who's purely a blocking tight end, much like Kevin Rader, you expect them to have good blocking stats. But, I mean, the wide receivers all struggled, but that's because they're all smaller guys. I mean, you're talking Ray McLeod, Deontay Johnson. I mean, Chase Claypool's big, but never really was a downhill blocker. He's that downfield stretch guy. James Washington was okay at blocking, but, I mean, okay really doesn't cut it. And then in a game or a year with 17 games, you expect receiving stats to go up. But really, the only Steeler who improved was Deontay Johnson this year. The only 1,000-yard receiver on the team was Deontay Johnson, who got targeted 170 times, caught the ball 107 for, 1,161 yards and 8 touchdowns. And only 2 receivers on the team had more than 5 touchdowns. That was Deontay Johnson with his 8 and rookie Pat Freiermuth catching 7. And it all seemed like all of those were in a 5-game stretch. That's what really hurt the Steelers here is the passing game, which is what the focal point is when you consider we threw it like 65% of the time, really didn't perform. It's not like there was an outstretch of guys who went out there catching touchdowns this year, right? I think it was a total of 6 guys caught touchdowns this year. Is that what it was? There were only 6 guys who caught touchdowns. I mean, you only threw for 23 touchdowns in the modern day NFL in a 17-game season. That's just not quite good enough to get it done. The receivers weren't playing up to par. I mean, you take out Deontay Johnson, I don't think any of the Steelers receivers graded out as a starter in PFF. I don't think there was a single one that was above 64 in the ratings. Tight end, I think Freiermuth was somewhere in the 20s, and that's because he had a really good contested catch rate. But the one thing I will say, in defense of this, because let's be honest, it's a struggling year when your second receiver has 860 yards. That's Claypool. You only have 2 guys with more than 2 touchdown catches as wide receivers, as Najee Harris had 3 with 500 yards on his 100 targets and 75 receptions. I mean, a lot of the passing game was going to the running back, which is fine, but you need better production out of the running back if you're going to have that. And then just looking at the Steelers wide receiver stats, what is it? 1 receiver with over 12 yards of reception, and that was Claypool at 14. Only 4 receivers averaged over 10 yards a catch. I mean, you're talking, that's not good. That was what's killed the Steelers, was just the inability to move the ball down the field. We could argue, is that the offensive line's fault? Is that the game plan's fault? Was that the quarterback's fault, or is that the receiver? I'd like to say it's a mix of everything. I don't think the receivers got the job done. Yeah, I mean, 2 receivers with over 400 yards receiving. 3 if you count tight ends because you can add in Freiermuth. 4 if you count running backs with Najee. In the modern day NFL, that's just not gonna get it done with that little production from the wide receiving core. It felt like Chase Claypool took a step backwards this year, but then again, I feel like that's because Ben couldn't get the ball to him. How many times was he missed wide open? And on the bright side, Claypool, one of the best in terms of pass interference yards gained for an offense, as he did do a good job of drawing a lot of PIs out there. The stat that I wanted to point out, though, to show that I think the receivers, maybe I'm being too hard on them, was over 20 yard contested catch rate. The Steelers were 4th best in the NFL, and that was led because James Washington was really good at it. And actually, surprisingly, Claypool, a top 25 receiver in terms of guys with over 10 attempts at contested catches over 15 yards. I mean, that's pretty good. It's a weird stat. It's not the best track thing. What do you consider a contested catch? I believe what their status was, and I got this from PFF, from one of the little side things that are doing stats. I think it was a watch game thing, and if there was a defensive back within 0.5 yard, or was it 0.5 yards? I believe it's 0.5 yards. So within a foot and a half of the wide receiver when he made a catch, it was considered a contested catch. It is what it is. I thought that was a pretty cool stat that showed pretty good for the Steelers when you consider one of the best contested catch tight ends was Pat Freiermuth. But is this a double-edged sword? Is it we weren't getting open and that's why the Steelers were good at the contested catches? The Steelers had, honestly, in terms of deep passes, on-target deep passes, the Steelers had one of the highest rates of contested catch opportunities in terms of deep passes that were on target. All sorts of weird advanced stats you can bring up there. I got lost in the stat world, and what I decided to say at the end of the day was not impressive from the receiving group. James Washington didn't take advantage of the opportunities when he was out there, although he wasn't really given many. Ray McLeod is just... I'm happy he's in San Francisco because I don't think he had any ability to make stuff happen here. Juju was hurt the whole year, but when he was here, I didn't find him very impressive. I mean, 15 catches, 129 yards, no touchies. Hopefully going into next year, you see improvement for Freiermuth. Hopefully these deep play receivers such as, Chase Claypool will get more opportunities. Hopefully we draft another wide receiver to fill some of the hole, or maybe Anthony Miller, who had that one amazing catch, gets a little more time out there. Deontay Johnson did look like he was starting to become a star, but at the end of the year in the biggest games, the dropsies came back for him, and that's just, it's not where you want to see. Hopefully Pat Freiermuth can continue his trajectory upwards. Hopefully concussions don't become a big problem for him. We moved on from the Eric Ebron saga as, well, he was hurt, he was ineffective, whatever you want to say. The fact of the matter is just not getting the job done anywhere out there outside of Deontay Johnson. You can't say any Steeler was productive to what the expectation was. Now, again, not sure it's all on the receivers here. Next year's going to be the big show. Let's see what Canada's offense can do. Let's see if these receivers can step into this offense. Let's see if these receivers can start making plays. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Claypool, for Deontay Johnson, for Pat Freiermuth, maybe even Zach Gentry stepping in there. There's a huge hole now with the departure of Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Ray McLeod. All those targets got to go to somebody. Is it going to be an Anthony Miller? Is it going to be a Cody White, someone who's already on the team, was on the practice squad? Is it going to be a lot of use of Gunnar Olszewski, or I don't know how to say his last name. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm sure I was really bad. The return specialist we signed. Is there going to be a draft at a wide receiver? Is there going to be a veteran brought in? I don't know. Jarvis Landry's still out there. Julio Jones got cut, so he's out there. There's a lot of names, a lot of talent that could still be added to improve the wide receiver group. But if you're looking at the wide receiver group and the tight end group from last year, bad at blocking, mediocre at catching the ball, I have to say, if I'm grading them, they get a C-. I mean, they weren't terrible, but they weren't good. I feel like they were in that, hey, were NFL caliber range, and that's mainly because of the year Deontay Johnson had to uplift this group. That's my breakdown on the wide receiving core, the tight end core. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you saw. Let me know if there's something more you'd like me to break down into it, but really just unproductive numbers, one really productive guy, just below average stats, but passable in the NFL because I'm not going to blame them fully for, in my opinion, weaknesses other areas, but I don't think they deserve to get credit like they did a great job because growth needs to happen in this group going forward for the Steelers to be competitive next year. Last year wasn't what you wanted, but hey, at the end of the day, the Steelers were a playoff team, albeit getting embarrassed in the playoffs, but hey, rather be there and have a chance, right? That's the way it's got to go. So it's time to get to shoutouts, and since we talked wide receivers this week, I guess it's only fair to give a shout out to the team's best receiver, a guy who really improved his drop rate and has to get credit for that. That's Deontay Johnson. He only had like 1 or 2 drops through the whole year, which is what he was having a game 2 years ago. Gotta give him a shout out. Hopefully he keeps improving. Hopefully the way he ended last year was just an anomaly, and he's now a sure-handed wide receiver, budding into a potential high 2, low 1 receiver. So as I like to call him, a 1B, because the 1As are the really good ones. A 1B is a guy who needs a burner beside him, but is probably a top 30 wide receiver. I'd love to see Deontay Johnson fit in that 20 to 30 range in terms of talented wide receivers, those 1Bs, those 2As. It'd be good to see, because we lost a guy who was in that range in Juju. At least he was in that range when Antonio Brown was here and Juju Smith-Schuster. Someone needs to fill those shoes. Good job stepping up last year. He takes another step forward, he's right there. So my shout out has to be to Deontay Johnson. That's going to end the episode. Let me know what you think. Leave me a like, leave me a comment. This is the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of donkey with Ginger's the YouTube channel. Let me know what content you're looking for. Let me know what you want to hear about. If there's anything special, if there's any other teams you're curious about, if there's any other, sport news you want to hear or anything, just leave it down there. We'll do our best to give you the content that you're looking for. Donk Nation, Steeler Nation, love y'all. Wave them if you got them. Here we go.